The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of translation devices. Ambassador Heejin Lee stood alone in the center of the Galactic Council Hall, surrounded by representatives from 47 different alien species. Above her, holographic displays showed the faces of beings that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Some had multiple eyes, others had no eyes at all, but all of them were looking at her with the same expression, pity mixed with contempt. The HFY War Prime stepped forward. His insectoid body was covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chamber's artificial lights. When he spoke, his voice came through the translator as cold and sharp as broken glass. The human species will evacuate 23 colonies within 60 standard days. You will pay tribute of rare minerals for the next 500 years. Your military vessels, except for basic defense craft, will be surrendered to HFY authority. Your expansion beyond your home system will cease immediately. These terms are not negotiable. They are fact. Heejin felt her heart pounding in her chest, but her face remained calm. She had prepared for this moment ever since Earth joined the Galactic Council 47 years ago. Humanity was the youngest species in the Council, the weakest, the least respected. They had no psychic powers like the Telkin. They had no ancient technology like the Valorians. Their military was a joke compared to the massive fleets of the older civilizations. The War Prime continued. Your species has shown disrespect to ancient territorial agreements. You have colonized worlds that belong to the HFY sphere of influence. This cannot stand. Accept these terms and your species will be allowed to exist under proper guidance. Refuse and you will be corrected. Around the chamber, other council members nodded. Some looked bored, as if this was just another routine matter. The Telkin representative was actually examining her claws, not even paying attention. This was how things worked in the galaxy. The strong dictated terms. The weak obeyed. It had been this way for millennia. Heejin took a deep breath. She thought about the colonists on New Daegu, families who had worked for decades to build homes on a distant world. She thought about the miners on Kepler Station who had risked everything to find resources for Earth. She thought about her own daughter, 10 years old, who dreamed of exploring the stars. No, she said. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. The Telkin representative looked up sharply. The Valorian ambassador's eye stalks twisted in confusion. Even the War Prime seemed stunned, his mandibles clicking in what might have been surprise. Explain, the War Prime demanded. I said no, Heejin repeated, louder this time. Humanity refuses your terms. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not pay tribute. We will not surrender our ships. We will not stop expanding. The answer is no. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Voices in dozens of languages filled the air. The translation devices struggled to keep up. The Telkin representative stood up, her voice sharp. This is madness. Does humanity not understand its position? The Valorian ambassador's voice was almost gentle. Ambassador Lee, please reconsider. The HFY Empire is 40 times your size. Their technology is centuries beyond yours. Their fleet could destroy every human world in a matter of weeks. This is not a fight you can win. Heejin looked around the chamber. She saw the same expression on every face now, shock. These beings had forgotten what it meant to say no to power. They had grown comfortable in a galaxy where strength determined everything. We understand our position perfectly, Heejin said. We also understand that you're asking us to give up everything we've built. You're asking us to condemn billions of humans to lives of servitude. You're asking us to tell our children that their future is decided by someone else. That is not acceptable. The War Prime's voice dropped to a threatening hiss. Then you choose extinction. We choose to fight, Heejin replied. The War Prime laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal scraping against stone. You will fight with what? Your primitive ships? Your undisciplined soldiers? The HFY Empire has not lost a war in 800 years. We have forgotten more about warfare than your species has ever learned. Maybe that's your problem, Heejin said quietly. The War Prime stopped laughing. For a moment there was absolute silence in the chamber. Then he spoke again, his voice formal and final. The HFY Empire grants humanity 30 standard days to reconsider. After that, we will take what is ours by right of strength. This council is adjourned. The holographic displays flickered off one by one. Within minutes the chamber was empty, except for Heejin and her small team of human advisors. One of them, a young diplomat named Jinho, looked pale. Ambassador, what have we done? He whispered. What we had to, Heejin replied. But her hands were shaking. 3 days later, Hyejin stood in the war room deep beneath the United Earth Government headquarters. The room was packed with military officials, scientists, and government leaders. On the main screen, Commander Taemin Park was presenting his analysis. "The numbers are simple," Park said, his voice rough from years of commanding troops. "The Vrexian fleet has approximately 12,000 warships. We have 243. Their average vessel is twice the size of ours and carries 3 times the firepower. Their shields are more advanced. Their weapons have longer range. In a direct engagement, we lose. Every time, so we surrender?" Someone asked from the back of the room. Park's expression hardened. "I didn't say that. I said we can't win a direct engagement. But war isn't just about direct engagements." He pulled up a new display showing Vrexian fleet movements over the past century. "Look at this. The Vrexians haven't fought a real war in 800 years. They fight pirates. They intimidate minor colonies. They parade their fleet around to show off their power. But they've never faced an enemy that refused to quit." Dr. Sumin Choi, Earth's chief xenobiologist, stood up. "Commander Park is right. I've studied the Vrexians extensively. Their entire military culture is based on overwhelming force and intimidation. They expect enemies to surrender when faced with superior numbers. They've never had to develop tactics for a prolonged conflict against a determined opponent." "What are you suggesting?" asked the Secretary General. Park leaned forward. "We can't beat them in a fair fight. So we don't fight fair. We hit and run. We attack their supply lines. We make them chase us across 100 systems. We make this war so costly, so frustrating, so endless that they'll wish they never heard of humanity." "That's guerrilla warfare," someone said. "That's dishonorable." "Honor doesn't matter when you're dead," Park replied bluntly. "The Vrexians are offering us a choice, surrender or die. I'm offering a third option. Make them regret ever giving us that choice." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Park was suggesting. This wouldn't be a clean war. It wouldn't be a short war. It would be brutal, desperate, and costly. But it was a chance. The Secretary General looked around the room, seeing the same determination on every face. Finally, she nodded. "Prepare for war. Commander Park, you have full authority to defend Earth and her colonies. Use whatever tactics you deem necessary. We're counting on you." As the meeting ended and people filed out, Hyejin approached Park. "Can we really win this?" Park looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know. But I know we can make them bleed. And sometimes that's enough." Back in orbit above Earth, Captain Minho Kang stood on the bridge of his destroyer, the Indomitable. He had just received his orders. In 27 days, the Vrexian fleet would arrive at New Daegu. His small squadron was to be there waiting. Kang looked out at the stars and thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about the life he might never live. Then he pushed those thoughts away and turned to his crew. "All hands prepare for combat operations. We're going to show the Vrexians what humans are made of." 27 days later, the Vrexian armada emerged from hyperspace above New Daegu. 200 warships, their hulls gleaming with threat, and waiting for them, impossibly small in comparison, were 3 human destroyers. The war had begun. Dr. Sumin Choi worked through the night in her laboratory, surrounded by xenobiological samples and computer displays showing Vrexian genetic structures. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but her mind was sharp with purpose. She had promised Commander Park a weapon, and she had delivered. The sonic disruptor wasn't elegant, but it was effective. When activated, it produced frequencies that interfered with Vrexian neural pathways, causing disorientation and pain. Human nervous systems were completely unaffected. It was a weapon, designed specifically to hurt one species while leaving another untouched. As she packaged the prototype for delivery to the military, Sumin felt a wave of nausea. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She had spent her career studying alien life to understand it, to build bridges between species. Now she was weaponizing that knowledge to kill. But when she thought about the Vrexian ultimatum, about the colonies that would be lost if humanity surrendered, the nausea faded. This wasn't murder. This was survival. Across human space, a new kind of warfare emerged. A hacker named Jiwan Im, barely 23 years old, led a team of cyber warfare specialists in an assault on Vrexian computer networks. They didn't try to destroy anything at first. Instead, they learned how the systems worked, found the security gaps, mapped the entire digital infrastructure of the Rexian military. Then they struck. Not with viruses or brute force attacks, but with something more subtle. They manipulated data. Supply requests got rerouted. Payment transfers were delayed. Communication channels became unreliable. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to create chaos. A Rexian warship expecting ammunition received medical supplies instead. A forward base waiting for food shipments got construction equipment. Officers trying to coordinate fleet movements found their orders corrupted or delayed. The Vrexian military machine, which had run smoothly for centuries, began to stumble. The WarPrime didn't understand what was happening at first. His logistics officers assured him the systems were functioning normally, but supplies weren't arriving on time. Ships were being sent to wrong coordinates. The confusion was spreading. "Find the problem and fix it," he ordered. "We cannot launch the Earth offensive while our fleet is in disarray." But finding the problem was nearly impossible. Jiwan Im's team had hidden their intrusions so well that Vrexian security couldn't detect them. And every time the Vrexians tried to patch one security gap, the humans found 3 more. Commander Taman Park watched the reports coming in and allowed himself a small smile. The Vrexian fleet was powerful, but it was also dependent on a complex supply chain. Disrupt that chain and even the mightiest fleet became vulnerable. "How long can we maintain this?" Park asked Jiwan Im during a secure video call. The young hacker shrugged. "They'll figure out what we're doing eventually. Maybe another 3 weeks, maybe more. But by then the damage will be done. Their fleet is already operating at reduced efficiency." 3 weeks is enough, Park said. "Keep at it." Meanwhile, Ambassador Hyejin Lee was fighting a different kind of war in the Galactic Council chambers. 3 species, the Kelthon Coalition, the Miros Republic, and the Than Collective, had begun offering quiet support to humanity. They didn't send ships or weapons, but they provided intelligence about Vrexian movements and shared advanced technology that Earth scientists could adapt. The Vrexian WarPrime demanded these species be punished for their interference. He called for sanctions, trade restrictions, even military action. But when the vote came, the Council split almost evenly. For the first time in millennia, the Council's decision-making process broke down. "This is what humanity has brought to the galaxy," the WarPrime declared. "Chaos, division, the destruction of order." Hyejin stood and replied calmly. "No, WarPrime. What humanity has brought is a question you haven't had to answer in a very long time. Why should the weak simply accept the will of the strong? You built a galaxy where might makes right, and now you're angry that someone is challenging that system." The Telkin representative hissed angrily. "The system exists for a reason. Without hierarchy, there is only war." "There's war now," Hyejin pointed out. "The system didn't prevent it. Your system just makes sure the powerful can bully the weak without consequence, until the weak refuse to be bullied." The argument continued for hours, but nothing was resolved. The Galactic Council, which had maintained stability for thousands of years, was fracturing, and that fracture was caused by a single, simple human word: no. Back in the combat zones, Commodore Minho Kang was planning something unprecedented. For 8 months, humanity had fought defensively, attacking supply lines and avoiding direct confrontations. But Kang believed it was time to change tactics. "We need to hit them at home," he told Commander Park during a strategy meeting. "Not their homeworld itself, but their territory. Show them that nowhere is safe." Park considered the proposal. It was risky. Sending ships deep into Vrexian space meant they might not come back. But the psychological impact could be enormous. "Do it," Park decided. "But make it fast and make it hurt." Kang assembled a strike force of 20 fast attack ships. They were small, lightly armed, but incredibly fast. Using coordinates provided by the Kelthon Coalition, they bypassed Vrexian patrol routes and struck at a mining colony in Vrexian territory. The attack lasted 11 minutes. Kang's ships destroyed the mining equipment, the processing facilities, and the orbital defenses. They didn't target civilian areas, but they made their point. Earth could reach into Vrexian space. The news of the attack spread quickly. For the Vrexian Empire, which hadn't had its territory invaded in over 800 years, the shock was immense. Citizens who had felt safe suddenly realized the war wasn't just happening in distant human space. It was coming home. Vrexian public opinion began to shift. War had always been something glorious, something that happened to other species. Now Vrexian families were losing members. Vrexian businesses were losing money. Vrexian politicians were facing angry questions about why a war against a supposedly weak species was proving so costly. The HFY tried to suppress the dissent, but it was spreading too fast. For the first time in his long career, he faced serious political opposition from within his own government. Commander Thex approached him carefully. HFY, our analysts have completed their assessment. At our current rate of attrition, this war will cost us more than the next 10 years of peaceful expansion would have gained. The mathematics are clear. We are losing. We have won every major battle, the HFY insisted. Yes, but we are still losing, Thex replied. The humans don't need to win battles. They just need to make the war too expensive to continue, and they are succeeding. The HFY's mandibles clicked in frustration. Then we escalate. Assemble the Grand Fleet. Every available warship. We will strike at Earth with such overwhelming force that the humans will have no choice but to surrender. And if they don't surrender? Thex asked quietly. The HFY didn't answer. On Earth, Commander Park received intelligence about the Vrexian fleet mobilization. 3,000 warships, the largest military force assembled in modern galactic history, were gathering for a single purpose: the destruction of Earth. Park called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership. The room was silent as he displayed the intelligence reports. They're coming, he said simply. Everything they have. This is it. Can we stop them? Someone asked. Park looked at the numbers. Earth's entire fleet, including reserves and newly commissioned ships, numbered less than 300 vessels. Against 3,000, the odds were mathematically impossible. In a straight fight? No, Park admitted. But I don't plan on a straight fight. He pulled up a new tactical display. We're going to make them think we're defending Earth with everything we have. We'll stage our fleet in obvious defensive positions. We'll prepare orbital defenses. We'll make it look like we're going to stand and die protecting our homeworld. Isn't that what we're doing? Asked Admiral Soyan Nam, one of Park's most trusted officers. No, Park said with a grim smile. While the Vrexian fleet is here, destroying our defenses and congratulating themselves on their victory, Commodore Kang is going to take a strike force and do something that hasn't been done in 2,000 years. He pointed to a star system deep in Vrexian space. We're going to attack their homeworld. The room erupted in shocked voices. Attack a homeworld? It was unthinkable. It violated every rule of galactic warfare. It was the ultimate taboo. They'll call it barbaric, Admiral Nam said. They've already called us barbaric, Park replied. The question is, do we want to survive? Because if that fleet reaches Earth and we have nothing to leverage, this war ends with humanity extinct. But if we can threaten what they value most, we might force them to negotiate. Dr. Suman Choi, who had been invited to the meeting, spoke up. Commander, even if this works, even if we force a negotiation, the galaxy will never forget what we did. We'll be known as the species that broke the ultimate rule of warfare. Park looked at her steadily. I'd rather be known as the species that survived. The plan was set in motion. Earth's defenses were prepared with great public fanfare. News broadcasts showed ships taking up defensive positions. Orbital weapons platforms were activated. Every citizen who could fight was given basic training. 6 months after the war ended, Commander Taman Park stood in the memorial garden on Earth looking at a wall covered with names. 2,300,000 military personnel, 900,000 civilians. Each name represented someone who had died because of decisions he had made. A light rain was falling, which suited Park's mood. He had retired from active service 3 months ago, but the weight of command hadn't left him. Every night he dreamed about the battles, about the ships he had sent into impossible situations, about the victory that had cost so much. You did what was necessary, a voice said behind him. Park turned to see Dr. Suman Choi approaching with an umbrella. She stood beside him looking at the wall of names. Did I? Park asked. I keep wondering if there was another way. Some strategy I missed that could have ended it faster, saved more lives. Suman was quiet for a moment. I published a paper last month. It's called The Predator Paradox: Why Humanity's Violent History Made Peace Possible. It's been causing controversy in academic circles. What's the argument? That humanity's capacity for violence, our willingness to do terrible things when survival is at stake, is actually what saved us. The Rexians expected us to be civilized in the way they understood civilization. They thought we would follow their rules, surrender when faced with superior force. But our history taught us different lessons. Park looked at her. That we're monsters. That we're survivors, Suman corrected. Every species in the galaxy evolved on worlds where they were dominant. They never had to compete with anything as dangerous as themselves. But humans evolved alongside other humans. We spent thousands of years learning how to wage total war against enemies just as intelligent and determined as we were. That history made us capable of things the galaxy had forgotten how to do. Is that supposed to make me feel better about what we did? Suman shook her head. No. It's supposed to help you understand that you didn't fail. You used the tools humanity had developed over millennia of conflict. Those tools were brutal, but they worked. We're alive because of them. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth the cost. They stood in silence for a while, watching the rain fall on the memorial. Across the galaxy, the impact of the war was still rippling outward. The Rexian Empire was undergoing massive internal changes. The War Prime had been removed from power. His career ended in disgrace. A new generation of Rexian leaders was taking control, ones who had learned from the defeat. Commander Thex, now promoted to High Commander, stood before the Rexian Military Academy and addressed the newest class of officers. His words were very different from what previous generations had heard. You have been taught that strength comes from superior firepower and numbers. The war with humanity taught us that this is only partially true. Strength also comes from adaptability, from understanding your enemy, from being willing to change when circumstances demand it. The humans defeated us not because they were stronger, but because they were willing to do what we were not. They were willing to abandon honor for survival. In the future, we must be prepared to face enemies who think like this. The cadets listened carefully. Many of them had lost family members in the war. They understood that the old ways had failed. The Rexian Empire would still be powerful, but it would be different, more careful, more aware that strength alone was not enough. In the Galactic Council chambers, the changes were even more dramatic. 3 species that had quietly supported humanity during the war, the Kelthon Coalition, the Miros Republic, and the Than Collective, had formed a defensive alliance with Earth. Other species were considering joining. The Telkin representative stood before the council and spoke angrily. This alliance upsets the traditional balance of power. Humanity has destabilized the galaxy with their refusal to accept their proper place. Ambassador Heejin Lee replied calmly, Our proper place, as you call it, was as servants to the Vrexians. We refused, and now we're equals. If that destabilizes your system, perhaps your system needed to be destabilized. The argument went back and forth, but the reality was undeniable. The Galactic Council would never be the same. The old hierarchies, based on ancient treaties and established power, were crumbling. New alliances were forming. Species that had been ignored were finding their voices. The Valorian ambassador, one of the oldest and most respected members of the council, spoke thoughtfully. Perhaps humanity has given us a gift, though not the one they intended. They have reminded us that the galaxy is not static, that change is not disaster, that strength comes in many forms. Yes, they broke our rules, but maybe our rules needed to be broken. Not everyone agreed, but no one could deny that the galaxy had changed. On Earth, Captain Minho Kang, now Fleet Admiral and the youngest member of Earth's Joint Chiefs of Staff, was overseeing the reconstruction of the military. The war had revealed both strengths and weaknesses in human forces. Kang stood in the shipyards orbiting Earth, watching new vessels being built. These ships incorporated technology shared by humanity's new allies, combined with the lessons learned from the war. They were faster, more adaptable, designed for the kind of warfare humanity now knew it might face. A young officer approached him nervously. Admiral Kang, the Senate committee is asking about the new tactical doctrine. They want to know if we're preparing for another war. Kang considered the question. Tell them we're preparing to prevent another war. The galaxy respects strength. If we remain strong, remain ready, then hopefully we won't have to fight again. But Kang knew the truth. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Some species respected that. Others feared it. And fear could lead to many things, not all of them peaceful. Jiwon Im, the young hacker who had disrupted Vrexian communications during the war, was now leading Earth's Cyber Defense Division. She had become famous, even celebrated, but she remained focused on her work. We changed the rules of warfare, she told a group of trainees. We showed that information can be as powerful as weapons. But now everyone knows that. Other species are developing their own cyber warfare capabilities. We can't assume we'll always have the advantage. We have to stay ahead. The trainees listened with the same intensity that Jiwon had once brought to her work during the war. They understood that the peace had been won, but maintaining it would require constant vigilance. Dr. Sumin Choi found herself in an unexpected position. Her controversial paper on humanity's violent nature had made her both famous and infamous. Universities across the galaxy invited her to speak. Some wanted to understand humanity better. Others wanted to condemn her arguments. At one lecture on a Kelthon world, a student asked her directly, "Do you think humanity is dangerous to the galaxy?" Sumin considered the question carefully. Yes, but not in the way you might think. Humanity is dangerous because we refuse to accept that things can't change. We look at systems that have existed for thousands of years and ask why. We push boundaries that others respect. That makes us disruptive. But disruption isn't always bad. Sometimes it's necessary. Another student asked, "Will humanity go to war again?" "I hope not," Sumin replied honestly. "War is terrible. But if we're threatened, if our survival is at stake, then yes, we'll fight." That's not a threat. It's just honesty about what we are. Back on Earth, Ambassador Heejin Lee was preparing for another council session. Her daughter Yuna, now 12 years old, came into her office. "Mom, my teacher said that some aliens are afraid of humans now. Is that true?" Heejin sat down and pulled her daughter close. "Yes, some are afraid. Some are angry. Some are impressed. And some are relieved that someone finally stood up to the old powers." "Are we the bad guys?" Yuna asked. It was the question Heejin had been asking herself for months. "I don't think there are simple good guys and bad guys. We did what we had to do to survive. Some of it was brutal. Some of it went against rules the galaxy had followed for a long time. But we're alive and we're free. In the end, that's what mattered." The teacher also said that humans fight different than other species. That we fight like we're always desperate. Heejin smiled sadly. "That's because for most of our history we were desperate. We fought each other for resources, for territory, for survival. We learned to do whatever it takes to win. Other species didn't have to learn those lessons. They evolved on easier worlds. But now the galaxy knows what we're capable of. Is that good?" "It's real," Heejin said. "And sometimes being real is more important than being good." Commander Park eventually returned to the memorial garden. This time he brought flowers and placed them at the base of the wall. He stood there for a long time, reading names, remembering faces. A young woman approached him hesitantly. "Commander Park? I'm Ensign Kyung. I served under Captain Daewon Lee. He died at New Busan." Park remembered the battle. "Captain Lee bought us critical time. His sacrifice wasn't wasted." "I know," Kyung said. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for giving us a chance to fight back. My family is alive because of the decisions you made." Park nodded, not trusting himself to speak. After the ensign left, he remained at the memorial until sunset. Later that evening, he met with Admiral Kang and Dr. Sumin Choi at a small cafe in what remained of Old Seoul. They didn't talk about the war at first. They talked about simple things. The Vrexian War Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, and watched the human destroyers on his tactical display. 3 tiny ships against his fleet of 200. It was almost insulting that they had bothered to show up at all. "Broadcast the final demand," he ordered. A moment later, his voice transmitted across all frequencies. "Human vessels, you are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your colony below has been evacuated. There is no reason to die here. Surrender now." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Minho Kang listened to the transmission and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Open a channel," he told his communications officer. When the channel opened, Kang spoke clearly. "Rexian Fleet, this is Captain Minho Kang of the United Earth Navy. Your demand is denied. If you want new Daegu, come and take it." Then he cut the channel and turned to his crew. "Execute Plan Razor. All ships engage." The 3 human destroyers suddenly accelerated at speeds that caught the Rexian fleet by surprise. They weren't charging toward the main fleet. Instead, they split up, each taking a different vector, moving in patterns that seemed random but were carefully calculated. The Rexians responded with overwhelming firepower. Hundreds of plasma bolts and missile salvos filled the space around the human ships. The destroyers twisted and turned, their smaller size allowing them to dodge most of the incoming fire. But some hits landed, shields flared and died. Hull plating burned away. But the human ships didn't try to fight back. They were doing something else. Every sensor on each destroyer was running at maximum capacity, recording everything. Shield frequencies, weapon ranges, targeting patterns, formation structures, communication protocols. They were gathering data. Hull breach on Deck 3. Someone shouted on the Indomitable's bridge. "Shields at 15%. "Keep recording," Kang ordered calmly. "Weapons, target that command carrier. I want to see how they respond to a direct threat." The Indomitable fired a full missile spread at one of the larger Vrexian vessels. The missiles were intercepted easily, but that wasn't the point. Kang watched how the Vrexian fleet repositioned, how they prioritized threats, how they communicated with each other. "Data package is complete," his tactical officer reported. "Ready for transmission?" "Send it now," Kang ordered. "All ships execute evacuation protocol." Throughout the 3 destroyers, escape pods launched in every direction. The pods were small, covered in stealth coating and scattered across a wide area. Inside each pod, human crew members held their breath as Vrexian sensors swept past them. The 3 destroyers, now running on automated systems, continued their attack run. They pushed deeper into the Vrexian fleet, firing their remaining weapons, drawing more fire. Finally, one by one, they exploded under the concentrated Vrexian bombardment. On his flagship, the War-Prime nodded in satisfaction. "A waste of lives. Scan for survivors and take them prisoner, then begin planetary occupation operations." But the human escape pods were already gone, picked up by a stealth ship that had been waiting at the edge of the system. Within hours, Captain Kang and most of his crew were on their way back to Earth. They had lost 3 ships, but they had gained something far more valuable: information. At Earth Defense Command, Commander Taman Park studied the data that Kang's mission had collected. For 2 days, he barely slept, analyzing every detail. The Vrexian fleet operated like a machine, but machines had patterns. Patterns could be predicted. Predictions could be exploited. "They fight like they're in a parade," Park muttered to himself. "Perfect formations. Predictable responses. They've been doing this the same way for so long that they can't imagine doing it differently." He started issuing new orders. Human ships would no longer engage in direct combat. Instead, they would hit supply convoys. They would mine hyperspace routes. They would attack repair stations and logistics hubs. They would go after everything except the main Vrexian fleet. Dr. Suman Choi came to him with another idea. "Commander, I've been studying Vrexian biology. They're insectoids, which means their nervous systems are very different from ours. I think I can develop a sonic weapon that will disorient them without affecting humans." "How long?" Park asked. "Give me 3 weeks. You have 2. Across human space, every colony, every station, every outpost mobilized for war. Civilian mining ships were equipped with weapons. Cargo haulers became troop transports. Communication satellites were reprogrammed to spy on Vrexian movements. Even children contributed, working in factories to produce ammunition and supplies. The Vrexian fleet moved from New Daegu to the next human colony, confident in their superiority. But when they arrived at New Busan, they found the colony already evacuated. And as they entered orbit, dozens of automated mining drones suddenly accelerated toward their ships at maximum speed. The drones were loaded with explosives. The Vrexians destroyed most of them, but 3 got through, damaging 2 cruisers. It wasn't a devastating attack, but it was annoying and confusing. Why would humans waste resources on such a minor strike? The answer came a day later when a Vrexian supply convoy was ambushed by human fighters near the Kepler belt. The convoy was carrying food, ammunition, and replacement parts for the main fleet. The human attack came from multiple directions, using asteroids as cover. By the time Vrexian reinforcements arrived, the convoy was destroyed and the human ships were gone. The Warprime was furious. They attack like cowards. They refuse honorable combat. His strategic advisor, a younger Vrexian named Commander Thex, studied the reports carefully. Warprime, perhaps we should adapt our tactics. The humans are not following traditional warfare protocols. We do not adapt to insects, the Warprime snapped. We crush them. Send the Third Fleet to blockade the human supply routes. I want their colonies starved into submission. But the blockade didn't work the way the Vrexians expected. Human ships simply went around it, using longer routes through unmapped space. And while the Third Fleet was spread thin maintaining the blockade, human raiders struck at Vrexian mining operations, destroying months of collected resources in a single attack. Weeks turned into months. The Vrexians won every major battle. They occupied 3 more human colonies. But each victory felt hollow. The humans never stopped fighting. They adapted to every Vrexian tactic, found weaknesses in every strategy, and slowly the cost of the war began to mount. Back on Earth, Ambassador Hyejin Lee stood before the Galactic Council again. The chamber was tense. Several council members were clearly uncomfortable with how the war was progressing. The human species is fighting dishonorably, the Telkin representative declared. They attack supply ships instead of military vessels. They use civilian equipment as weapons. They refuse formal rules of engagement. Hyejin looked at her calmly. Rules? The Vrexians didn't offer us rules. They offered us surrender or death. We chose neither. We chose survival. The Valorian ambassador spoke up, his voice thoughtful. Ambassador Lee, you must understand. The galaxy operates on certain principles. There are accepted ways of conducting war. Your species is violating those principles. Your principles asked us to abandon our homes, Hyejin replied, to give up our freedom, to condemn our children to servitude. So forgive us if we don't care about your principles while we're fighting for our lives. A new voice joined the discussion. It was the representative from the Kelthon Coalition, a species that had always stayed neutral in council matters. Perhaps the problem is not that humanity fights dishonorably, but that we have forgotten what real war looks like. We have become comfortable. We have turned warfare into a game with rules that benefit the powerful. Humanity reminds us that survival is not a game. The statement caused a stir. Other council members began arguing. For the first time in centuries, the council was divided. The Warprime tried to push for sanctions against any species that supported humanity. The vote failed. 3 species abstained. 2 voted against. The cracks in the council's unity were beginning to show. Meanwhile, Captain Minho Kang, now promoted to Commodore after his successful data-gathering mission, led a strike force on a daring raid. Intelligence suggested the Vrexians were building a forward supply base in the Tau Ceti system. Kang's force hit the system hard, destroying the half-built base and capturing enough supplies to keep Earth's fleet running for another month. As his ships retreated, Kang received a transmission from Commander Park. Well done, Commodore. But be ready. The Vrexians are going to escalate. Kang looked at his tactical display. The Vrexian fleet was reorganizing, pulling back from some occupied colonies to concentrate their forces. They were learning. They were adapting. Good, Kang muttered. If they're changing tactics, it means we're hurting them. On the Eternal Victory, the Warprime met with his commanders. His frustration was visible in every movement. These humans are like parasites. We cut off one limb and they strike from another direction. We defend our supplies and they attack our bases. How do we fight an enemy that refuses to stand still? Commander Thex spoke carefully. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The Warprime's mandibles clicked angrily. Negotiation? We offered them terms. They refused. They refused surrender, Thex corrected. That is not the same as refusing negotiation. The Vrexian Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 3,000 warships, their hulls gleaming with menace, arranged in a display of overwhelming power that was meant to crush any hope of resistance. They had come to Earth not just to win a war, but to make an example. On his flagship, the Warprime looked at the blue planet on his display and felt satisfaction. This would be the moment that restored Vrexian prestige. After months of frustration, of guerrilla attacks and supply chain disruptions, of fighting an enemy that refused to fight honorably, This would be the decisive battle. Earth would burn, and the galaxy would remember to fear the Vrexian Empire. "Begin the assault," he ordered. The Vrexian fleet moved forward in waves. The first wave encountered Earth's orbital defense platforms and destroyed them methodically. The platforms fought back, their weapons scoring hits on Vrexian shields, but they were quickly overwhelmed. One by one, they exploded in silent flashes of light. The human fleet, positioned in defensive formation around Earth, launched their counterattack. Nearly 300 ships, everything humanity could gather, charged forward to meet the Vrexian advance. It was brave. It was desperate. And by every tactical calculation, it was doomed. Commander Taman Park watched the battle from Earth Defense Command, deep underground. Every explosion, every lost ship was felt like a physical blow. These were his people dying up there. But the battle was going exactly as he had planned. "Commodore Kang, what's your status?" he asked over a secure channel. Light years away, Commodore Minho Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at a very different display. Before him was HFY, the homeworld of the Vrexian Empire. It was heavily defended, but most of the fleet was at Earth. The defenders here had been stripped to skeleton crews. "We're in position, Commander," Kang reported, "ready to execute on your order." "Not yet," Park said, watching the battle at Earth. "We need them fully committed. We need every Vrexian eye on Earth." The battle continued. Human ships fought with desperate courage, but they were being pushed back. The Vrexians were winning, just as everyone expected. More orbital defenses fell. More human ships were destroyed. The Vrexian fleet began positioning for planetary bombardment. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from 47 species watched the live feeds in stunned silence. Many had opposed the Vrexian aggression, but seeing Earth's defenses crumble was still shocking. Some felt guilty. Others felt relief that it would soon be over. A few felt something like grief. Ambassador Hyejin Lee stood alone in the human observation gallery, watching her homeworld burn. She wanted to close her eyes, but she forced herself to watch. If her people were dying up there, the least she could do was bear witness. But then something changed. A message came through on the Council's emergency channel. It was flagged with the highest priority coding. When it played, every representative heard Commodore Kang's voice. "Attention, Vrexian Empire. This is Commodore Minho Kang of the United Earth Navy. We are currently in orbit above HFY. Your homeworld is undefended. Your fleet is at Earth, and we have enough firepower to do significant damage." The feed switched to show Kang's fleet in orbit above the Vrexian homeworld. 50 ships, weapons armed and ready. On the planet below, billions of Vrexians went about their lives unaware that an enemy fleet hung above them like a sword. "We do not wish to harm civilians," Kang continued, "but we will do whatever is necessary to protect our own. HFY, you have brought your fleet to our home. Now we stand at yours. This war can end right now, or it can escalate to levels the galaxy hasn't seen in millennia. The choice is yours." In the council chambers, chaos erupted. Species that had remained neutral were suddenly terrified. Attacking a homeworld was the ultimate taboo, the one line that no one crossed. It was what separated civilized warfare from barbarism. The Telkin representative was shrieking. "This is madness. They cannot be allowed to threaten a homeworld." The Valorian ambassador looked pale. "If they actually attack, if they set this precedent, every war in the galaxy will become existential. No one will be safe." But the Kelthon Coalition representative spoke calmly. "The Vrexians are currently bombarding Earth. Is that not also attacking a homeworld? Or does the rule only apply when the humans are doing it?" At Earth, the Vrexian bombardment had stopped. On his flagship, the HFY stared at the message from Commodore Kang, his mandibles clicking in rage and disbelief. How had humans gotten a fleet to HFY? How had they bypassed all the defenses? How had they dared? Commander Thek spoke urgently. "HFY, we must respond. The capital is demanding answers. Our people are terrified. I will not be threatened by insects," the HFY hissed. But his voice lacked its usual certainty. "They have our homeworld at gunpoint," Thek said bluntly. "If we continue the attack on Earth, they will retaliate against HFY. They have proven they are willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Will you risk billions of Vrexian lives to punish one human world?" The HFY knew the truth. If he gave the order to destroy Earth, Kang would attack HFY. And even if Kang's small fleet was eventually destroyed, The damage would be catastrophic. Millions, perhaps billions of Rexians would die. And for what? Pride? But if he backed down, if he ended the attack on Earth, he would be admitting defeat. The Vrexian Empire would be humiliated. His career would be over. The decision was taken out of his hands. A new transmission came through, this time from HFY itself. It was the Vrexian High Council, the civilian government that technically outranked even the War Prime. All Vrexian forces. This is High Counselor Vex. You are ordered to cease fire immediately and withdraw to a safe distance from Earth. We are entering emergency negotiations with the Galactic Council to resolve this conflict. War Prime, you are to report to the capital immediately for debriefing. The War Prime wanted to refuse, to continue the attack regardless of orders. But he saw the expressions on his bridge crew. They were relieved. They wanted this war to end. If he continued, they might not follow him. Slowly, with every movement showing his rage and humiliation, the War Prime gave the order. All ships cease fire. Withdraw to defensive positions. The Vrexian fleet pulled back from Earth. Human ships, battered and damaged, held their positions but didn't pursue. Commander Park let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Commodore Kang, maintain your position but do not engage unless fired upon, Park ordered. Understood, Kang replied. We'll keep watching over HFY until this is settled. In the council chambers, Ambassador Heejin Lee found herself suddenly surrounded by representatives wanting to speak with her. The Galactic Council, which had spent months divided over the human-Vrexian war, was now united in one purpose: end this before it escalated further. The emergency negotiation session lasted for 3 days. It was tense, with neither side willing to concede easily, but both sides knew the stakes. The Vrexians couldn't continue the war with their homeworld under threat. Humanity couldn't maintain their position at HFY indefinitely. Ambassador Lee negotiated not from weakness, but from a position of strength. She had the one thing that terrified the galaxy: a demonstrated willingness to cross lines that others wouldn't. The final terms were better than anything humanity could have hoped for when the war started. Human colonies would remain human territory. No tribute would be paid. The Vrexians would issue a formal apology for their aggression. And most importantly, humanity would gain full voting rights in the Galactic Council, with the same status as any other species. In exchange, humanity agreed to withdraw from HFY, to establish clear boundaries for future expansion, and to enter into a mutual defense pact with several other council species to prevent future conflicts. When the agreement was announced, reactions across the galaxy were mixed. Some species were relieved that the war was over. Others were terrified by the precedent humanity had set. A few were impressed, even admiring. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. The war was over. They had survived. Against impossible odds, facing an enemy 40 times their size, humanity had refused to surrender and had forced a peace as equals. But for those who had fought the war, the celebration was bittersweet. Commander Park attended memorial services for the fallen, reading names of soldiers who had died following his orders. Dr. Sumin Choi looked at her sonic disruptor prototype and wondered what other weapons she might be asked to create in the future. Commodore Kang returned to Earth a hero, but the faces of his crew members who hadn't made it back haunted his dreams. Ambassador Heejin Lee stood in her office, looking at a holographic display of Earth. Her daughter, now 11 years old, was down there somewhere, safe because of what humanity had done. But Lee couldn't shake the feeling that they had changed something fundamental in the galaxy. A message came through from the Kelthon Coalition ambassador. Ambassador Lee, congratulations on your victory. But I must ask, was it worth it? Was it worth becoming the species that threatened a homeworld? Lee considered the question carefully before responding. My daughter asked me what I would do to protect her. I told her I would do anything. That's what humanity did. We did anything to survive. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, so be it. But we're alive.